He just looks like he smells.
Yes,
so.
Morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Planning Commission to order. This is the Planning Commission for August 9th, 2018, in case anybody didn't know. We had a work session previously in which we did the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'm going to jump right into today's agenda. And the first thing is changes to the agenda. Ms. Tusing, are there changes to today's agenda?
Good morning, Commissioners. Margaret Tusing with Building and Development Services, and there are changes to the agenda. The first one is agenda item number 4, which is PDMU 1801ZP, SMT Auto LLC, CarMax number 6103, Bradenton. It is a quasi-judicial matter, and there is a revised staff report, recommended motion and strike through underlying format, and that's the change. Excuse me. Item number 5 is PDMU 1802ZG, Daryl, David, and Diane Cannon, who are the owners, DePizzo Irrevocable Trust, which is the contract purchaser for the Fort Hamer Senior Living. A quasi-judicial matter. There was an advertising error, so therefore it needs to be continued to the September 13th Planning Commission and October 4th Board of County Commissioners meetings, and it will have to be re-advertised. Item number 6, PDMU 1729ZG, which is Red Pine Inc., owner and Specialty Restaurants Corporation contract purchaser, known as Whiskey Joe's. There's an updated general development plan included, and those are the changes to the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Shank, anything from the County Attorney's Office?
No further changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to minutes, which is actually item number 1. Are there any additions, revisions, comments regarding the minutes? I had made a comment regarding a change.
Yes, that was a good catch.
So if there are no additional comments, are these the corrected minutes in the agenda package?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If not, the change has been made.
Okay, thank you. Chair will consider a motion regarding the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the July 12th, 2018 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. DeLesline, second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, the chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right, we're going to move on to citizen comments. We had a opportunity for citizen comments during the workshop, but I'd like to go ahead and open it up again for citizen comments. And again, this is not for anything on today's agenda. This is future agenda items. So is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward, make a statement or comment regarding future agenda items? Okay, seeing none, no one come forward. We're going to close citizen comment, and we're going to jump right into the applications. The first one, yes, ma'am. So the first one is quasi-judicial, so we'll have to have everybody sworn in. So if you would, please rise to be sworn in if you intend to be to speak on today's agenda.
Swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which are about to present to the Planning Commission will be truthful and accurate.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first item we have is item number 3, which is to be continued. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do we need to read the item into the record, or how do we do that?
I think we read it in and then say that it will be continued.
Okay, very good.
Because it's been advertised for today's hearing.
Okay, Ms. Tusing, can you please introduce that item?
Yes, the first item on the agenda is PA 1806, Ordinance 1827, DEA Mangrove LLC, NFA Manatee Grove LLC, Jefferson Manatee LLC, FPL South Fork Solar Energy Center, which is a large-scale plan amendment. This is a legislative matter, and it is requested, the applicant has requested that it be continued to the September 13th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, we would move to open the public hearing, hear from anyone, and then continue to the date certain.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And again, I'm sorry, that is a legislative matter, not quasi-judicial, but the result's the same. Everybody's sworn in, so.
All good.
Good work. All right, so we're going to open this application up for anybody who wishes to come forward and speak on this application specifically. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward? Okay, seeing nobody come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion, and I guess we'll entertain a motion to continue on September 13th, 2018. Chair's considering a motion.
So moved.
Mr. DeLesline, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Rhodes, second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right, item number 4. This is quasi-judicial, so.
Yes, it is.
So Ms. Tusing, can you introduce this item? And again, this is presentations upon request, correct?
Correct. And we will continue, we feel that the brief presentations that staff gave at the last meeting were well received, so we will follow that same format where staff will give a brief presentation.
Very good, thank you.
Item number 4 is PDMU 1801 ZP SMT Auto LLC CarMax, number 6103, which is in Bradenton. It's a quasi-judicial, and Ryan Todd is the planner. This is a rezone of approximately 1.3 acres of an 8.5 acre site known as 5320 and 5400 14th Street West in Bradenton from general commercial GC to the PDMU Plan Development Mixed Use Zoning District with a preliminary site plan, and it is for an automobile dealership for the entire 8.5 acre site with an FAR of 0.02.
Thank you. Mr. Todd, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. For the record, my name is Ryan Todd. I'm a planner with Manatee County, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
As Ms. Tusing commented, this is scheduled as a presentation upon request, so I'll provide a brief introduction and be available for any questions should you have them. The request before you today is to recommend approval of a preliminary site plan for an automotive dealership located at 5320 14th Street, and the rezone of approximately 1.3 acres of the 8.5 acre site from general commercial to planned development mixed use. There is one specific approval associated with this request. That is to allow more than 10 consecutive parking spaces without a landscaped island on 6 rows. Staff recommends approval. Pending any questions, this completes my presentation.
Thank you. Very concise. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? And again, it is a presentation upon request, so we're going to focus on any concerns or comments that maybe may arise in the review of the application. Anyone? Mr. Rutledge.
Would this fall under the new proposed format of earlier this morning as not having to be a PUD?
Negative, because currently half of the site is, 7.2 acres is zoned PD. So we would have to come before the board.
So 0 for 1. I was just kidding.
Yes, unless they rezone the entire site to general commercial.
So the application stands as it is. We're not going to revise it today. So,
is that at 50,000 square feet?
So is there anybody who has any comments on this or questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Todd. We're going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this? Is there anybody at all? Again, this is application, item number 4. Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, again, we'll open it up to the commission. Is there any concerns in reviewing the application?
I just had one question.
Mr. Rutledge.
Is there any intention that you know of to integrate this with the access point with Wawa's? And how about on the backside, that road? We'd heard a lot of things about that roadway on the backside of the very west side of the property. Some of the conduct back there and some of that. Do you know anything about that as...
The back side of the site, I believe, backs to 16th Street.
Yeah.
And the site plan is proposed to program the stormwater retention on that side of the site, so there will be no access to 16th Street from the site.
And maybe this is a question for Mr. Galliano or Mr. Gerstenberger. The site, even though it has an existing access point to 41, it'll be required to make modifications during the review to make any driveway consistent with DOT standards.
When the applicant submit the final site plan, we will review the operational conditions at the accesses.
Right, and again, it is a state road, so DOT will have the authority with regard to access points?
Yes, sir. For
Okay.
the record, Nelson Galliano.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr.
May I ask
Rutledge?
you a question?
No. Well, I guess maybe staff are,
The designed roadway seems to have anticipated a fairly significant access point. Do you think that would be changed, in your professional opinion?
It is up to the applicant to modify the access.
If they desire, but.
Yes. But it is better not to modify the access because it's an existing right.
right, and again, Mr. Galliano, is it your understanding that DOT will dictate whatever requirements are required?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir,
okay.
because it is a FDOT facility.
Yep, okay, thank you. All right, very good. Anything else? That's why we do presentations upon request, so, all right, the chair will, for the record, have there been any ex parte communications regarding this site?
I've been to that Wawa.
I think I have too, so. All right, again, I'm sorry, ex parte communications, seeing none for the record, none disclosed. All right, we're gonna entertain a motion, and I'd like to remind the commission that I believe there's a revised motion in our packet, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion,
Mr. Rhodes.
a revised motion. Based on the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and the Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein, I move to recommend approval of Manatee County Zoning Ordinance, PDMU 18-01ZP, approval of a preliminary site plan with stipulations A1 through 3, B1, C1, and D1 and 2, and granting specific approval for an exception to strict compliance with LDC Section 701.3.A.4, minimum required interior landscaping islands for vehicle use areas, as recommended by the staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ron, second. Any additional discussion or deliberation? Seeing none, the chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to the next application, which is item number 5. Ms. Tusing.
Yes, sir. This is item number 5, which is also being required to be continued. This is PDMU 1802ZG, Daryl, David, and Diane Cannon, who are the owners. DePizio Irrevocable Trust, which is the contract purchaser, and it's Fort Hamer Senior Living. It's a quasi-judicial matter. Ryan Todd is the planner, and there was an advertising error that we discovered yesterday, so it needs to be continued and re-advertised, and the proposed dates are September 13th, 2018 for Planning Commission and October 4th for the BOCC.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes,
said
ma'am.
they asked staff a question. Was it advertised at all?
It was advertised in the newspaper, and they posted signs. They did not do mail notice.
We still have to open it for public hearing.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Tusing, is the 13th a date certain?
Yes, but
Number
it will
13.
still have to be re-advertised.
Yes, ma'am.
Because the advertising was not done properly.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to open this application up for public comment, and again, it's going to be continued. It'll be continued to September 13, 2018, Planning Commission. So is there anybody who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing, and
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes, ma'am.
realize I'm using the word continued, and it's not really continued. It's removed from this. It's being removed from this agenda, and will be heard at September 13th.
Ms.,
Is that correct?
Ms.
Well,
Schenk, does that change
Technically,
anything?
it's motion to open the public hearing, direct staff to re-advertise, and continue to September 13th.
And continue it, okay.
So, do I need to open the public hearing?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we're opening the public hearing to re-advertise and directing staff to re-advertise. So, and again, just for continuity in the discussion, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on the re-advertising? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public comment hearing portion of the hearing. And again, the chair will consider a motion to, Ms. Schenk, help me out.
Motion to open the public hearing, direct staff and applicant to re-advertise the public hearing for a continuance to September 13th, 2018 Plan Commission meeting.
Okay, what she said.
So moved.
Mr. DeLesline made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Roth, second. Sorry about that. Often, I don't know why it rang. We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any additional deliberation or discussion? Okay, seeing none, the chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye, motion passes 6-0. All right, so we're down to the scheduled presentations. Ms. Tusing, can you please introduce item number 6?
Yes, item number 6 is PDMU 1729 ZG. Red Pine Inc., who is the owner, Specialty Restaurants Corporation is the contract purchaser, and the name of the project is Whiskey Joe's. It is a quasi-judicial hearing, and Dorothy Rainey is the planner. This is a rezone of approximately 0.82 acres of a 1.77 acre site located at 5313 and 5315 19th Street East in Ellington, from RSF 6, residential single-family 6 dwelling units per acre, to the PDMU, Plan Development Mixed-Use Zoning District, with a general development plan for approximately 9,000 square feet of eating establishment with associated outdoor space and waterfront structures.
Thank you very much. For the record, have there been any ex parte communications regarding this application?
No.
Okay. Seeing none. Morning, Mr. Grimes. Yes, for the applicant, we have Mr. Grimes. If you could, please state your name and that you have been sworn.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Caleb Grimes, and I have been sworn. I'm with the law firm of Grimes, Goebel, Grimes, Hawkins, Gladfelter, and Galvano. And I have a nice crew with us here today. I have my senior planner, Ms. Dorinda Marvin, and our planning technician, Danielle Ellis. I'm pleased to be representing Specialty Restaurants Corporation, and with us we have Mr. Jim McKinnon, our Chief Operating Officer, and Marty Duffany, our brand manager. Oh, he's over here, sneaked up on me. We've worked with some really good consultants on this. Our engineer, Nathan Crott, with ZNS Engineering, is here. Environmental, I'm sure you've noticed the site is along the river, so we've been very careful with our environmental questions, and Joel Christian with Eco Consultants. And we have looked at the traffic issues, and we have, with the White House Group, Mr. Michael Yates, back over here. And just to make it clear, and this is, I think, a little bit about what you might have talked about this morning, Commissioner Rutledge, we are one of those where the site is currently zoned in two different parts. One half of it approximately is zoned PDMU, or Planned Development Mixed Use, and one half is zoned RSF 6, single family. 60 density units per acre. So what we are having to do is we're having to rezone part of it. So we're here for a rezoning, but for only half of the site, to bring it all under PDMU. And then as it is PDMU, we are asking for approval of a general development plan, just a general plan, over the entire site that is requesting approval to allow up to a 9,000 square foot restaurant on this site. And as the site is adjacent to the Manatee River, our comp plan requires special approval. And we accomplish that through the plan development process, which is why we are doing plan development now under this one. I'm not sure if that would change in the future where this could be a straight commercial, but for now under the code, we need to go through the plan development process. And I just want to, as you will see as we go through this, I want to talk for just a minute about our GDP. As you know, GDPs give general information. We usually see them on very large tracts where you may have roads that you have to identify that will go through, and you have areas that you will identify for the kind of uses you have. We usually see those as kind of like a blob, you know. It's what we see on our GDPs. We establish our setbacks, we establish our buffers, and we establish our uses. And those are established in a table or in the written parts of it. As this is only 1.77 acres, we don't have streets going through it, we don't have different uses in different areas, so our GDP is fairly benign, to say the least. But we'll give you more information about it as we go through. But for purposes of what we approve, a GDP is fairly simple. So first, I'd like to look at the site. And whoop, somebody's doing it for me. Thanks. Appreciate it. Well, I wasn't ready for it yet, but we're ready now. So just so everyone can get oriented, if you look at this aerial, this is I-75 going over the river, and you'll see where the interchange is. That's US 301. If you look in the, if we can see it, this area here is our Ellington Outlet Malls, just to get you oriented, and the arrow is pointing to the site. And if I can go to the next one, this is zooming in a little bit, and we have circled where the site is. We'll give you a little more details in it in a minute, but as you can see, this is a site along the Manatee River. The road adjacent to it is 19th Street East, which, as you know, is the frontage road for 301 in this area. This whole area that we're looking at up and down the river is designated ROR in your comprehensive plan, which, as you know, is retail, office, residential. And as this area is adjacent to US 301, heavily influenced by I-75, the comp plan has long recognized that having non-residential uses in this area is appropriate, and we see them up and down this road. The applicant, Specialty Restaurants, builds, owns, and operates restaurants all over the country, and in the U.S., all over the U.S. In Florida, they have 5 restaurants currently, and 3 of them under the name of Whiskey Joe's. One of those is in Miami, one is in Tampa, and one is in Port Richey. And the idea of what they have and their theme of their Whiskey Joe's is to capture the waterfront, to make use of the waterfront. As you know, we have restaurants all over this county that are on the waterfront. It allows people to enjoy their dining experience, get their feet in the sand a little bit out in front, and have their dining experience with this wonderful view, enjoying the river, and being able to go forward with it. And this particular site consists of 1.77 acres and is designed for a 9,000 square foot restaurant. The site, if you notice, is owned by RHED, Red Pine Inc. That happens to be Rhea and Ed Childs, which is the RHED, and it was originally purchased by him to have a restaurant much like this one here. But as you know, he's been putting some efforts into his restaurants on Anna Maria Island, and so he has brought in Specialty Restaurants to do something that would be very similar to what Ed has done out on the island with his beach house and his sandbar restaurants. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do now is let me just stop for a minute here. We have this picture that we wanted to show you. You've probably heard that this area has been in a little bit of flux because the FDOT has been talking about redoing the intersection at this site. And this picture shows you what they are planning to do. They have now come in and taken what was the Leverox restaurant, which is next to this site, and they have planned for a, whoops, I hit something wrong. They have plans for this cul-de-sac that will come in and end, so 19th Street will not go through anymore. I'm not doing this very well, am I? So 19th Street will no longer go through, and you can also see where the on-ramp will be. The FDOT has actually now, a couple of months ago, completed their taking of the Leverock site, and they have taken a clip off of this site that you can see where a little clip off the corner was taken. So we are planning for the conditions in the post-FDOT taking. So we've worked with your staff, we've worked real hard with Dorothy and Rob and your transportation people and everyone with that in mind. Now, as I go forward, what I said is that our GDP is very simple, but we have prepared for you a conceptual plan. It's part of our environmental review to give you a feel of what we're talking about putting on this site. And as you can see, it is a restaurant. It will have a deck, and it will have an area in front of it where people can enjoy the shore and enjoy what's out there. This is an idea. This is their restaurant up in Port Richey, this is being modeled after. So at this time, I'd like to ask Marty if he would come up and tell you a little bit about what their plans are for this site specifically. And if you want to go through the pictures, you're welcome to, or we can do it.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me the chance to speak here today. I really appreciate it. For the record, my name's Martin Duffany. I am the brand manager with Specialty Restaurants. I've been in Florida for the last 20 years. I currently live in Land O'Lakes, Florida, so I am local. I actually live about...
You've been sworn.
And I've been sworn. So,
Thank you.
Forgot that part. So I just wanted to show you this picture of Port Richey and how our restaurants tie in to what we are doing on the waterfront. First of all, we like to consider our restaurant concept, Whiskey Joe's, as something that brings a little bit of the island feel to people here in Florida that want to enjoy some time out in the water. We incorporate our restaurant into the beach area and then incorporate the waterfront so people can enjoy a great meal inside, as you could see. With the big garage doors, an indoor-outdoor restaurant that leads to a huge deck that, of course, will have water views. And then at the end of your dining experience, you can go down to the beach, or you could eat on the beach and just enjoy the water. You could see all the lights that we do and light up the dock. Whiskey Joe's has always been a concept, along with Jim McKinnon. For the last 10 years, we've been developing this concept. We are not, even though Whiskey Joe's might incorporates the word whiskey, actually it's a funny story that we put together about Whiskey Joe and in relationship with Gasparilla that happens in Tampa. Whiskey Joe is a pirate. So that whole story kind of rolls in, and you could read that online. I don't want to get into the whole story of Whiskey Joe's, but that's what that is. And basically, we are a family-oriented restaurant. I have 6 kids myself. In the Tampa location and in Port Richey, the whole idea is for young families that might have been earlier in their lives, have been able to go out and listen to some island music, or Jimmy Buffett is what we play there. And, now they have kids and they feel like they can't get that experience. What Whiskey Joe's allows is for families to come in and have a nice dinner with younger children and actually run around the beach. We see it all the time in the Tampa location and Port Richey and Miami. So it allows people to experience something that they might not have had the opportunity to do in a few years. And like I said, people with children that are younger, you will appreciate that. You could actually finish your meal while your kids run around on the beach. So the whole idea of Whiskey Joe's is to incorporate the family aspect of it. We have, if you do research, you will see that we are food-oriented in the Florida lifestyle, fresh seafood and that nature. We have over 5,000 reviews on social media that you could look into to see what kind of feedback we get from our guests and how they enjoy the Whiskey Joe's atmosphere. Our whole idea is to bring that feel down to Ellington and that beautiful location that we have here, and to make sure that people get the same feeling that they do in Port Richey. Port Richey was a fantastic location. The Ellington location will have the same type of feel and build. The Tampa location's a little bit different. Our company had a restaurant that was there, and Whiskey Joe's got wiped out in the hurricanes in 2004, and it took us about 4 years to move the concept over to State Road 60 under the Castaway brand that we switched. So it's a little bit different building, but the same type of feel. And we just love it. It's something that's close to me over the last 10 years, putting this restaurant together. As being in the restaurant business for over 30 years, I could tell you that it's a very special project to me, and we just want to give that feel to as many places in Florida that we could possibly bring to get that old feel restaurant feel that you get in Florida. So that's basically what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Marty. Just as a little bit of a recap, we talked with staff this morning, and we had made a recommendation of a stipulation that somehow got inadvertently left out, and they would like us to agree with it. They think it's a good one. It's a stipulation on protecting the river and the waterfront. It is in, if somebody can tell them how to find it, it is in the It is in the Wetland Buffer Mitigation Plan, and it is under Recommended Development Order Conditions, item number 1, that a final wetland buffer plan will be submitted for review and approval with the final site plan. It will include sufficient detail for staff to determine compliance with this approval, and we're going to add, and the comp plan, and shall address the following, and there's several items that will be addressed. We are very careful about protecting our river and meeting all our wetland issues, and so we're asking that that be added in as a stipulation, and I think staff will tell you they agree. I have about 30 seconds, if I may.
Yes. Do we have a copy of that? Is that in the package?
Yes.
It's in the package.
In your e-agenda, it's under the Wetland Mitigation Buffer Management Plan.
Oh, in the, okay.
And I apologize, Mr. Chairman. You know, your plan has different page numbers than what I have, and so I wasn't sure how to direct you to it.
I think it's page 140.
Here, we can go to the document. If you can go to the document cam, we can show it to you.
I think it's page 140 in the e-agenda. And I want to point out to Mr. Grimes, we had a portion of the stipulation as number 7 already. We'll just add to it.
All right, so we'll have this be in place of stipulation 7.
Yeah.
This will be in place of stipulation 7, so hopefully with a motion it will say with the replaced stipulation 7.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. What I want to point out is one of the things that you will notice is we are not asking for any specific approvals. This restaurant will meet all requirements of parking. It will meet all requirements of setbacks, all your code requirements of buffers, all your code requirements of noise. Everything that we have in our code, this is going to meet. And so the design is not to come up with anything, but our code says is how we should develop in these kind of situations. So we request that you recommend approval And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Grimes, can we discuss the DOT taking for a moment?
Certainly.
The graphic that I'm looking at is, I think, the colorful graphic in the.
Let's see if we can go back to the doc. Yeah. Okay. Let's. This one. Which one? That one.
That one's sufficient to discuss.
Or did you want the one that was?
That's fine. Either is fine. So
okay,
we're showing.
So just leave that on. That's for now.
We're showing a paved area that indicates a future ramp. Is that correct?
If you can see the little arrow I'm putting, this is going to be a new southbound ramp onto I-75. If you recall, right now, to go southbound, you come up here, you turn left, and you go around a circle. They're going to put a southbound ramp onto I-75. And when they do that, they're going to cut off 19th Street East. And in cutting off 19th Street East, they then have plans to put in a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give a little. Nathan told me this, that we don't have all engineering plans, the CADs and everything to draw in, but we have all of their plans and what they've shown, and so this could be off a foot or two some
Okay.
direction.
So the dead end, the terminal cul-de-sac, the dead end cul-de-sac, is that going to be owned by DOT or is that going to be owned by Manatee County?
I actually talked to Saji about that yesterday, and he said that what is consistent with the FDOT's in these situations that they will turn this over to Manatee County.
Okay. What's being represented appears to be asphalt. Is there additional right-of-way also being taken or given?
No.
So the right-of-way will end at the edge of asphalt?
There will be some space between the road and the property line. It's, again, this is depicting what's there. If you looked at our, for example, our site plan, let's see, let me go to the, have you got it in more detail?
Yeah. This is the right-of-way line right there. So there's
Thank you, Michael. If we can go to the document cam, all right. Mr. Chairman, this is the road right here. Here's the pavement and the curb here, and here's the right-of-way line off of it.
Okay.
And you can see how the right-of-way line comes off of it.
And again, for clarification, that will become public right-of-way.
Correct. It's really nothing different than is there today. 19th Street East is still public, and then instead of going all the way through, you'll go to a cul-de-sac and turn around. It will, of course, affect people who are to the east, that if businesses to the east that their people are using this road now, that will stop. Again, I talked to Michael. He said that in the after situation, actually the traffic on this part of the road, even with this restaurant, will be way lower than what you see today because of all of the people that drive down to the east. I'm sure the people to the east are not real happy about having their access changed, but this is what FDOT is building, and they've already taken the right-of-way that they need for that.
And again, just for clarification, these items that we've discussed, the terminus of 19th Street, the proposed exit lane, or entrance lane, I guess, these are all being done by DOT separate and apart from what is occurring with this application. It's just this application accommodates DOT's requests and requirements.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, just want to make sure that this is accommodating, not causing the issue.
Correct. This is accommodating their plans.
Okay, very good.
We know they're there. They've taken the land. They have it funded. They're building it. So we don't want to plan for something different.
Very good. Okay, just want to make sure that was my understanding was correct. So, any additional questions for the applicant? Anything?
Do they need to do anything?
Mr. Roth?
The dock, I guess you'd call it, is that already, it says proposed. You need to go to the federal government to get that approved?
I'm sorry, for the dock?
The proposed dock.
There is one dock that is there
I see that.
that is in dire need of being fixed and repaired. That will be fixed and repaired. We have proposed the right to build a second dock with this. We may or may not build that, but we would, of course, have to go through the normal dock permitting, which is SwiftMud, FDEP, that whole group to get that permitted, and then all of the rules that we would have to meet we'd have to meet all those rules.
And I would guess because you are Grimes, Goebel, et cetera, that the other dock has already been approved?
The other dock is an existing, long approved dock, and it will be rebuilt. If I can go back to the PowerPoint, I'll show you to the aerial. Oh, going the wrong way. You can see right here that there was a boat ramp there that we will not be using as a boat ramp. But you can see that that area has already been long opened up for boats to come in and out of that space. And again, that dock is existing. We'll go through everything we have to go through to make sure it's rebuilt according to the rules and regulations and permits.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rutledge.
And following up on that, though, your drawing shows that the dock is moved closer to what is kind of the environmental section of that. Is that right?
That dock will stay where it is.
Okay, because the drawings show something a little different.
I'm gonna try to get there.
Caleb, I just do this for entertainment, you know.
Yeah, I understand. This is depicting a second dock if we choose to build it. In other words, that we've got a second dock approved if we choose to build it, and its exact location could shift slightly. This was a concept plan to show what we're doing. It would probably shift a little more to the east, just to keep them a little farther apart.
For clarification, you said approved. What right or what ability does the Planning Commission or the Board of County Commissioners have with regard to a dock, since it's regulated by the state?
I'm not sure I can answer that, but we do go through the county for permission to build docks. And you, in your county, have a set of rules and regulations on how you build docks. We go through the permitting. We make sure it's that we don't have boat mooring where it's too shallow. We make sure that we put the manatee signs up, all of those things that are in your code. Mm-hmm. So the county has the right to assure that docks are built in accordance with good practices and the rules and regulations.
The idea of the dock is probably what would be accepted by the county, and the mechanism would be through the state?
Both state and county. The county looks at to make sure that we're following all your rules and regulations on them.
There's no law against double jeopardy, right?
Double docks.
We have to go through a lot of permitting agencies, as you know, and there's a lot of overlap.
Mr. Rutledge.
So I had one of the questions regarding the boat traffic. How much boat traffic do you think you're going to see through this? I mean, the contemplation of two docks kind of raises the questions like, okay, how much velocity is going to be coming out through there?
Well, the idea, and it's in the plan that Joel has done a lot of work on that to look at how many boats could or could not come in and out. We believe, and in part from we're already getting boaters asking about when can we stop there. There's already boat traffic on the river. There are people going different places. We expect a big deal of that are people who are on the river and then want to stop. And so even though we hope to have boat traffic come and people come there to eat, a certain percentage of it will be boaters already on the water. I don't have that number I can get it for you when we come back in rebuttal because Joel did the math of what.
Just kind of curious, is the number 10 or 100, it kind of matters, I guess.
It's in our plan, I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
Joel will find it real quick here.
Then the other question I had is, how many seats in the restaurant? What's it designed for? 9,000, what do you got, 350 seats in there, or what's the?
Well, the restaurant will, I will say the one in, and you can probably help me if you need to, but the one up in Port Richey we're designed after has about approximately 100 inside, and then it has approximately 70 on the deck, and then there is the potential of people who want to eat out on the beach if they can. Am I pretty close with your
You're
numbers?
pretty close. It was, we had 138 on the deck and 92 inside is the actual number, and then some spillover onto the beach.
For 9,000 feet?
I'm sorry?
For 9,000 square feet of restaurant space?
That's all?
Seems small. Usually when you get that size, 5,000-foot restaurant, you can accommodate around 200 and whatever to get your liquor license. So it just seems like a small number of seats for a physical plant that's 9,000.
Well,
To me,
it's,
I don't know.
It's,
I'm not in the restaurant business.
right, it'll be close to, like I said, about 204, I think it's 248 would be total upstairs, and then to accommodate more down on the beach. So, right now, we seat about 70 on the beach in Port Richey.
Okay, so 70 and 240. So it's close to 350. Not a bad guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that includes the bar, or that's just chair?
Includes everything, all seating, yeah.
Okay, so 350. And how many seatings you do a night, or just ballpark?
So, it depends. Florida's, depending on the time of the year. So we're probably, in Port Richey, I can give you an example. At some point every night we fill up for maybe an hour or so. When it's in season, of course, it's a lot busier.
3 turns?
Yeah, probably 3 turns, yeah.
And what are the hours proposed?
So we open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then 11 a.m. to 12:30 is last call on Friday and Saturday.
So I know the Tampa location. I don't know the Newport Richey. And so obviously one of the sensitivities that you kind of get with restaurants with music is that sound transition over the water. So
sure.
How's that experience been for you?
Oh, it's fantastic. So what we did, and
I hear that. It's fantastic.
I'll tell you why.
Of course it is.
So,
wait till you hear this. This is really.
We have neighbors across from the Tampa location.
Yeah.
So a few years back, not because of us, but because we had Hulk Hogan's open.
Right.
So the city of Tampa wanted a study done, and we spent a considerable amount of money bringing in an expert in sound and how it traveled across the water.
Right.
And they went out 2 miles, 3 miles into the Dana Shores area to see if they could hear our music. They brought back a lot of great information. So we were able to, at Tampa and Port Richey's a little bit more evolved with technology because we built it a little bit later. But what we do is we don't allow any bands to bring in their own equipment. So we put everything on site. And then what we do is we have buffers in our system, so if a band tries to push their music too hard, it immediately shuts off. The great thing about Port Richey, because we're in the next evolution now, is what we do is we put ground speakers throughout the property.
And shoot it back.
Right, so you'll see it, yeah. So what we do is that allows the band to play without pushing all the music off the stage that you would normally hear at a concert venue. So we're able to, the manager, what happens is when the band comes in, they have an iPad. So we're able to cut off different sections. So if you were at the Tiki Bar and wanted to listen to the football game, we turn that music off. And we're able to adjust. So if somebody on the beach said, your music's a little bit too loud, we could turn that particular speaker down. So we could adjust it. But to that point, you need to understand, in Port Richey, we don't have bands per se. What we do is we bring in duos. We play island music, trop rock, Jimmy Buffett, and country music. That's what we play. That's our concept. Tampa's a little bit different because we're in a more commercial-free zone, so we do things a little bit different. But as you can see, the proximity in Port Richey to the neighborhood that's across from us, it's maybe 125 yards to multi-million-dollar houses. We've been open there since February. We have a great relationship with the neighbors. They actually, at the beginning, gave us some feedback, so we were able to set our levels, and we haven't had any complaints at all. Tampa, I haven't had a music complaint in over 3 years since we brought in the outside company to do do all that research for us. So
'Cause obviously Hulk Hogan was, his group was pretty famous for their challenge.
yeah, he would. Yeah, yeah. So we had to deal with the excessive noise coming from the hotel there. So our Jim wanted us to get a study done to make sure that we're not disrupting the neighbors across the way. And we just took that technology and moved it right to Port Richey. It's been, and you could see, maybe 125 yards across the water and no complaints.
Have you been working with county staff regarding this matter?
It's actually controlled with the city of Port Richey. So
No, I mean, for this proposed site, have you been coordinating?
If I may,
Yes, sir.
we have reviewed with them what our plans are and how we will do this. And one of the things that, just to say a couple of other things, our hours, our music stops at 10 o'clock, all nights. Music stops at 10 o'clock. And then I want to stress, Commissioner Rutledge, that how this system works. Ordinarily, if you have a band and you want everybody in the site to hear it, the band has to play loud. By this, if you have and I use the term band very loosely because Marty just, I mean, it's, you know, it's like at the yacht club, if you stop there, they have a duo that plays quietly. So by doing this, and they have, I think you said 17 speakers out and about. So this person sitting here, it doesn't have to be loud for them to hear the music. And you don't have to have the band playing loud to hear the music. So when you have these things scattered all over, and like I said, 17 of them, we're able to, that's why I say we're able to absolutely meet sound ordinance issues and keep it work. We do not want to have somebody calling and saying you're too loud. And people dining in and of themselves are not loud. I mean, that you hear some dishes clink, but it is something that they have worked very hard on, which is why we're not asking for anything and why staff has not said we have to do anything special with sound, because we're able to control it and meet your ordinance.
Yeah, because, you know, there's a very famous case down in Sarasota, the boat guys, and it was pretty treacherous. So I think this is a great solution. I'm very interested to hear that. And the one thing about our staff, they are unrelenting. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean it nicely, Ms. Ducey.
And if I may answer the question on the boat traffic, Joel did a study to come up with what he thinks would be the number of boats, the average stay that would come and go during a whole day, lunch and dinner, and the maximum usage Monday through Friday is estimated to be 48 boats. So that's coming and going over a 12-hour period. So, and then on the weekend, 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday. Hope for a lot more boats because we'd like to have them there and not people driving. 180 boats maximum.
Thank you.
Over that 24-hour period.
Thank you. And one of the things I think we need to discuss is the buffer impacts, if we could. Mr. Christian, we're showing a buffer impact. Are there wetland impacts?
Joel Christian, for the record, I've been sworn. No, there's no wetland impacts proposed. Obviously, construction of a new dock would go through that area, but that would meet the allowances and allowable activities within the Land Development Code and state regulations. So they're not considered technically wetland impacts.
And if I may, Commissioner, I want to make sure everyone understands. This is a high and dry site. And out in front of it, there is riprap that has been put over the years that will need to be repaired. I mean, it needs to be brought up to standards. And within that riprap, there are isolated mangroves that grow in the riprap. That's what is technically called a wetland. So there are no wetlands as you might envision them, a low place in the land where water accumulates. What there is riprap with some mangroves growing in it.
Mr. Christian, the wetland edge is defined by the the mean high water, is that correct? Or is it?
Not the wetland, no. That, the wetland line is actually a little landward of the mean high in this location, so you'll see some different waterfront setbacks versus buffers.
Okay, I do see that.
But they're pretty close to each other.
And then what is the typical vegetation currently in the existing buffer?
Currently, there's some trees, some live oak trees, some cabbage palms, but mostly it's been disturbed over many years. I mean, one of the parcels within this project area was a single-family home site for a while. The other one's been vacant, but been continually mowed. Right now, it's a little overgrown, some chest-high guinea grass out there, that kind of thing. But
And is there any significant stands of Brazilian pepper within the existing buffer?
There's some, but there's not a whole lot. It's mostly pretty pure mangrove.
Would the intent be to remove all
definitely
invasive species, which is, I think, pretty typical and very important?
The county requires it to be removed from all upland portions of the site. We would go out into the wetland fringe, the mangrove fringe, and remove them from within there too.
And then we see on the plan I'm looking at, which is the concept plan from the mitigation plan, we see a buffer replacement of approximately 4,400 square feet. And is that going to be a planted mitigation area?
Yeah, so this exhibit, you'll see a light green area and a dark green area. If I can find my cursor.
There you go. That thing's pretty quick. It is.
So the light green area there is where the existing buffer would be. That's the 30-foot uniform width buffer.
Right.
Where we've narrowed it down along this location to have, that riparian feel for the property owner, to have views, to enjoy the water. We've compensated for them, I think, at a little greater than 1-to-1 per the comp plan. When you do variable width buffers, it's an average width 30-foot buffer. So the same overall square footage that would have been in a 30-foot uniform, we're providing it in more of a variable width.
And you said it would be a planted buffer.
Yes, the Manatee County requires that all wetland buffers be restored prior to CO of this property. So there would be nuisance exotic removal. There's going to be a plant and shrub and ground cover vegetation planted in there, supplementing what's already there, obviously. But yes, it'll definitely be a planted buffer.
And then on just referring to the graphic presented on the southeast side of the building, it seems to run parallel to the proposed mitigation area. Is the intent to have a physical barrier, or is to separate the
adjacent to the building?
Yes.
There'll be a setback to how close that building can be to the wetland buffer. There may be. It's not required. We haven't gotten that far along in design on, what kind of activities may take place on that side of the building. Does there need to be a barricade to keep employees out of that area, or, incidental activities? But, as far as access, I mean, we want people that come to this place to be able to respect that kind of riparian buffer, to respect those mangrove areas. It almost becomes a public education thing. They enjoy it so much. These guys now start getting calls when they see other people start taking things out. They know they're supposed to be protected because they've been here. So it's almost an educational type situation where, people that come here will enjoy it and hopefully respect it a little more than they would have otherwise.
Right. Just the proximity of the service area, the beach, and the building, it would seem that there would be an opportunity for things to creep into those buffers. So I think any effort to preserve or identify that would be.
And again, this is a concept plan. It's just to see how things would fit.
Right.
Is this service area going to be in this exact location at the final site plan? We have yet to begin that effort. So those are things that as we go through that process, I'll be working with the engineer and the site designer to say, you probably shouldn't have this here. If you do have this, maybe we need a privacy fence between the service area and the buffer. So those are the things that will come forth in that proffered stipulation, where we have that final wetland buffer management plan that'll address those details at a final site plan level.
Okay, very good. I would think staff would be looking, since it is a mitigation area, ways to preserve the mitigation. So that would be appreciated. Thank you. Any additional questions? Mr. Rutledge.
Mr. Christian, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So I read through the study about all the animals that are not there. So there's nothing there. There's no turtles, no brown rats. There's no flying bazookas.
I can't testify about whether there's bazookas or brown rats, but I know there's no gopher tortoise within this site. I've driven it. I mean, it's a pretty small site. It's pretty easy to walk, pretty accessible. We didn't anticipate any. We didn't find any. As part of that final site plan, we have to do an updated listed species evaluation. We'll go out to the site, make sure nobody, dropped off any gopher tortoise on the site, or they didn't find their way to the site. Double check, make sure there's no eagle nest within the vicinity.
No scrub jays.
No scrub jays.
Yeah. But your general assessment is you don't see any.
No, of course, manatees use the Manatee River.
I've heard of this.
And we will have to go through Army Corps permitting, and they will require consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife regarding manatees. So we will go through that process.
Commissioner, just to remind you that these were two platted home sites. There was a home on there. It's got some oak trees. It is not connected to any system. And you have a road and US 301 and I-75 there. Not a really good site for animals to come.
Slow-moving animals? Or?
So as Joel said, we didn't expect anything, and so we found what we expected.
It's my understanding this will be the winter nesting site for the northern snowbird. So, if all goes as expected.
That's why you're the chairman.
And the Jimmy Buffett lovers.
All right. Any additional comments for the applicant? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to staff presentation. Is there? We have Miss, and the winner is.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Dorothy Rainey for staff, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
It'll be a very brief one and probably has already been covered by the applicant. However, I'll go ahead and go through it. The case before you, of course, is Whiskey Joe's. Go to the next slide, please. Or am I able to do that? Oh, I'm sorry. There's a zoomed out aerial photo of the site on the left, and of course zoomed in on the right, which you've seen those. Next slide. The future land use category, of course, is retail, office, residential, and the zoning, the west half is RSF 6, which they're requesting to rezone to PDMU to match with the east parcel, which is already PDMU. The details, it's rezoning of 0.82 acres, which is what the west parcel is, of a 1.77 acre project from RSF 6 to PDMU, and approval of the GDP, which includes 9,000 square feet of restaurant use with the associated amenities. And it's at 5313 and 5315 19th Street East in Allenton. The proposed FAR is 0.12. Maximum allowed in this location is 0.35. Open space they've proposed is 30% or 0.53 acres, so they're meeting the entire requirement. The flood zone is X and AE. The surrounding uses, of course, to the north across US 301 are commercial and retail uses. South side is the Manatee River, and the east side is the FDOT owned property. West side is residences. And this is photos, shots looking west and east from the frontage, or at the parcels rather. This is looking north across 301. This is the shots on the road seen looking to the west and to the east. And this is somewhat into the site looking to the west at the residence, and then I couldn't really get to the to the east edge of the parcel, so this is the FDOT, the old lever rocks looking to the west. There's the existing dock, which is in disrepair, of course, and as the applicant mentioned, they will rehabilitate that. This is all I could get for a shoreline shot because I couldn't climb through and I wasn't on the water. So anyway, that's just looking to the east and to the west. The access to the site is by way of the frontage on 19th Street East, and it's an existing, I believe they'll be using the existing driveway at the far west end of their frontage. And the access, of course, will also be provided for vessels from the Manatee River. The positive aspects, are that the east parcel is already currently zoned for commercial use, PDMU, and it is adjacent to a commercial use, which of course is now closed and will be part of the interchange. The site also has frontage with indirect access to US 301, which is classified as an arterial roadway. The commercial development and redevelopment is occurring along the south side of US 301 to the east of this site, so there's more commercial as opposed to residential as you go eastward along 19th. And the proposed restaurant will provide additional dining choices in an area which currently has restaurants. The negative aspects, apparently there was changes and additions to my original one, so we'll go by what's in the application packet, that the site, this one was retained, the site abuts a single-family residence to the west, and there may be potential negative impacts relative to lights, glare, and noise to the residential areas. And then there was also one added, any potential negative impacts. Actually, this would be more, there may be negative impacts to the wetlands and listed species. And then all the mitigating measures. Noise impacts will be required to be addressed with the final site plan. So they've altered the one mitigating factor. So whatever's in the packet, again, the mitigating will be required at the final site plan through utilizing a project design. A lighting plan in compliance with LDC regulations will be submitted at the final site plan, and the site will be required to provide adequate buffers and screening adjacent to residential development. Potential impacts to the manatees will be coordinated, as the applicant had mentioned, or Joel had mentioned, with both the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the project will be required to obtain an environmental resource permit from SwiftMud. They are requesting special approval as required because their project's adjacent to the Manatee River, perennial stream. And our findings are for recommending approval of this request, as the project will be designed to prevent any adverse impacts to the river. And we recommend approval with conditions provided in the ordinance.
Thank you. Ms. Rainey, can you just speak to two items, possibly speak to two items? We discussed noise and lights. Mm-hmm. Do you know, is it the county's standard, or they're typical to, after, say, the site is constructed and maybe placed into operation, or maybe even before placed into operation, is there verification of things such as the noise level at property boundaries, or the bleed over of lights, maybe taking of measurements of light source? Do you know if that's a part of the building permit process or part of the site development process?
I don't believe that we do that specifically. For lighting, they are required to provide a plan that meets our cutoff and all that. Mm-hmm. If they choose to do lighting, which I'm sure they will, they need to do a lighting plan, and it'll be included with the final site plan, and we'll make sure that it meets all our cutoff requirements. However, on occasion, I recall in the past, staff may be going out on a particular site because either they got a complaint or they questioned it, or somebody drove by and said, it looks like that light's like glaring right in everybody's faces. Right. And then as far as the other question of, you said lighting and the noise.
Noise, right.
We do have that, we've stated noise impacts will be required to be addressed with final site plan. Now, they have mentioned to us their facility will have certain noise mitigating features and things, partly being the speaker system that they explained to you earlier. Mm-hmm. That will also, they have to be in compliance with the noise ordinance and the noise levels. And most likely, if we get a complaint, a code enforcement person would go out and measure it, but otherwise, I believe we'll leave it to them to comply. Okay. Unless there's issues or.
So the intent is made clear during the process, and then if it should be violated, code enforcement.
Right. Yeah, they have the stipulations and conditions that they have to uphold during the whole, construction and then the use of it. So that would, I guess the public will police those items if necessary.
They will.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be, but yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Any additional questions for staff? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and go to the public comment portion of the hearing, and I have one speaker card for Mr. Garrick Mullen. Mr. Mullen, if you wish to come forward, please. You can probably come down the center of the aisle behind the staff area here, and if you would, please make your comments, state your concerns.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And Mr. Mullen, you have been sworn. Is that correct? Okay, thank you very much.
I'm going to provide him with the mic.
All righty, thank you.
Perfect.
Good morning, I'm Garrick Mullen. I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
If the county allows the parcel to be rezoned as commercial restaurant, its customers will increase traffic, noise, and litter along the street. I first need to state that I live at 5201 19th Street. That puts me 6 houses away from the site. Although we wish the best for the establishment, we have concerns about the number of cars parked along the street, speeding, the ability of patrons to carry out peripherals, and boat traffic. Because this is an open commercial space, fire code will allow maximum occupancy to be measured by the number of people standing outside rather than seating. Knowing this, vehicles will exceed the limit of the establishment's parking lot and people will utilize the street shoulders. The county must not subject the residents of 19th Street to blocked driveways, trampled yards, and littered lawns. County must paste no parking signs along the street, please. Traffic on 19th Street. The restaurant expects to open next summer. We currently have issues with speeding on 19th Street as drivers attempt to avoid traffic lights on 301, take back entrances to commercial establishments there. So for a year, we expect double the amount of traffic down our road going to the east side of I-75 and trying to go to the new restaurant. Florida Department of Transportation has funded the I-75 and 301 interchange for 2020, which then cuts off the 19th Street causeway or road. The restaurant is expected a turnover of 200 plates a day. This averages possibly 70 cars a day during their business hours. Even after the east side is blocked off, that's still a lot of residential. That's still a lot of traffic on a residential street where children live. The restaurant, we've been informed, will use a valet system. What safeguards is the county going to be putting in place that safe speeds will be maintained? Lowered speed limits on that road, speed plateaus to avoid drivers driving too fast, additional street lighting to make it safe. Concerning the waterways, we've now heard the numbers on the amount of boats coming to the restaurant. One thing that hasn't been noted is that Woody Ruse is on the other side of the interstate. That also has a dock. It also has boat traffic. So how about establishing wake zones around that area? So that would be 2 establishments on the same side of the river, half a mile away from each other. Do you think it's appropriate to put wake zones?
Go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay. And to protect mangroves and shoreline. What speeds will be set for those boaters? How often will you patrol those waters to protect the environment and the residents? Sidewalks. Why are they building a sidewalk to nowhere? There's building, as part of the site plan, they build a dead-end sidewalk just for their site. What about beautifying 19th Street? Why can't we further that sidewalk along? Our parcels have 20-foot shoulders between the road and our property. There's excess amount to put in a pedestrian walkway. Now is your opportunity to improve that frontage. Peripherals. Understand that there is heavy fines for restaurants when patrons exit the restaurant with alcoholic beverages. This is easily contained when the restaurant is a box with a few doors on it. However, this establishment is open from the sand to the parking lot. Will people be walking off the grounds with beer bottles? What kind of impact will this have on our neighborhood street? How often will I find beer bottles in my yard? There needs to be some protection. I understand that a transition is taking place to evolve our street into a commercial location years from now. But that does not mean that the county can forego responsibility of its residential members. Presently, living on that street, and my neighbors expect to live there generations later on this street. You do not have a right to ignore us. I understand that Manatee County's future plans include rezoning residential parcels by the year 2035, pursued by commercial developers wanting to rezone, such as going on here. But that does not mean that the county has relinquished its responsibilities to serve its residential citizens on 19th Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mullen, were you a resident on 19th when Lever Rocks was in operation?
I bought my residence in 2014.
Okay. I think that was...
It was after Lever Rocks closed. From what I understand, Lever Rocks closed just that year before.
Okay.
I do understand that Lever Rocks was a successful business. They did have a lot of customers. The existing neighbors, they did complain at the time of traffic. The restaurant would have succeeded, but it had to do with internal business.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Okay, anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing, and just a couple follow-up questions for staff. There was, I know I've heard other applications in this general area, and one of the things that is brought up frequently is parking along the right-of-way. What is the county's intent with regard to controlling the folks who may be parking, which I believe is illegal to park in a right-of-way, but what type of enforcement mechanism is there for something such as that?
If I might speak initially and state that, when we reviewed the final site plan and they give us the exact, numbers of seats and all that, we're going to make sure that they meet the minimum parking requirements, and hopefully that will take care of it. They may provide alternative options such as the valet parking and indicate, we can do X number of vehicles to be parked through the valet system or whatever. But, of course, we're going to make sure that they demonstrate that they're going to provide all the parking they need to support the use. And then, of course, if that's not enough in the future and they start parking on the right of way, we would have code enforcement issue, violations or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, which they have done, I believe, with the River Route in past times.
Okay.
Well, and I think that what we would do is, as Dorothy said, we will be looking at this in detail at the final site plan level. As you notice, the general development plan really did not have a lot of information, but as Mr. Grimes stated, they intend to meet all code requirements. They have not asked for any specific approvals, which would include reduction in parking. And I think it might be, I'm sure Caleb will, Mr. Grimes, will address this, during rebuttal, because it sounds like this restaurateur does pay attention to what, the neighborhood and how best they can serve those residential units.
Okay. Currently, there are 80 spaces, it looks like, allotted.
Again, that is a graphic representation.
Okay. What would the people who are applying for this have to do to get no parking on the 19th Street, as suggested?
I'm sure we have some process that you have to follow to have no parking on the right-of-way. I don't know what it is.
I think that may be something you want to investigate. I know it's a constant discussion when we have these businesses along this road. I recall hearing some other discussions. I'm not 100% sure. Staff may want to investigate, but I believe it's illegal to park within a right-of-way, like this type of right-of-way, but I'm not sure. I don't know if it's different than a neighborhood road.
On the east side, where Woody's Roo is there parking on the street, or is there signs that say no parking?
I thought there were signs there.
That again, that may be something we want to be prepared to discuss at the board account when this application goes to the board. So,
Mr. Chair.
Find out as Mr. Mullen suggested that
All right.
who needs to pay for and apply the signs on the right of way saying no parking.
Mr. Gerstenberger did mention that it would not be part of this ordinance, but if the residents want no parking along 19th, it would also apply to them. I don't know if they park on 19 now, but if they have a party, then they would petition the county to put up no parking signs.
okay. And who could they speak with at staff to? Would Ms. Rainey? Maybe Ms. Rainey would be the first point of contact since her name is in the staff report. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rhodes.
Mr. Galliano, possibly what Mr. Mullen talked on when he was talking about traffic on 19th going east and speeding and that, I would think that with that now being terminated into a cul-de-sac, that the traffic at that end of 19th Street and there really being no destination other than if you live there or the restaurant, that would cut drastically down on the traffic that he had concern with. Is that correct?
Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right.
All right. And then one additional question. I think I know the answer to this, but just for staff, Ms. Rainey. Ms. Rainey, there was a discussion regarding sidewalk in front of this property. I think I know the reason why we're showing sidewalk only in this area, but can you please provide clarification why sidewalk oftentimes is segmented related to development?
That's probably something that Tom can probably answer. He deals more.
For the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department, have been sworn. Mr. Chair, the requirements through the code are specifically for the frontage of the project only. The sidewalk construction would only be required along the project frontage.
And it's parcel by parcel or property by property. It's not
correct
connecting it to one point or the other. So it's segmented for that reason because that's the limits of the property boundary. Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's what I thought the answer was. I just wanted to verify. And the last question I have for staff is wake zones. Does the county enforce anything like a wake zone or anything related to the navigable waterway?
Go ahead.
I believe that area there might be a wake zone already out there. I know there's
Woody's, I think.
There's one out there for manatee that's designated along the river right there.
And Mr. Nabel, I think that's the first time you've been on the
Oh
mic.
yeah. Oh, Robert Knable. I'm with environmental planning. I have been sworn.
Thank you. Okay. I don't want the clerk throwing anything at me.
That's right.
He's already in trouble.
Yeah. All right.
I had one question.
Mr. Rutledge.
So first of all, Mr. Miller, thank you for bringing all this to our attention. You know, I don't live there, but these statements, I think, raise a lot of points for our staff, and I think that's helpful because I think the goal is not to do this without taking, like you said, responsibility. So I appreciate that, and without that help, I don't think we do as good. So I had 12 items. May I read them to you?
Can we stop you?
Well, it's probably.
Are they questions or just?
They're comments that I would like staff to keep in mind that
Okay.
I noticed, and maybe they're valuable, or maybe you've already thought of them. I'm sure Caleb will advise them appropriately. But, being 6 houses away, I think obviously that's going to be a high level of sensitivity for the noise. You know what I mean? So that noise issue is obviously now designated at 6 houses away. Maybe it's closer than that, but I just think that's something to keep in mind. The number of cars. I would love to have somebody, when they do the traffic study, tell us when they cut off that traffic access, how many cars go there. So maybe some of the speeding things are impacted by that. But I also am curious about the ideas of what changes in the conduct of the roadway as to speed plateaus, which I like better than speed bumps, but speed plateaus, signage, et cetera. So I know in my neighborhood where they were using it as a cross-through, they reduced the speed limit by 5 miles an hour, and it's amazing that that did really have some impact. So that came to mind when you said that. The boat traffic, although, I have great respect for Mr. Christian, I'm just curious how his analytics work to get the boat numbers, because I think that's an interesting question with the animals and so forth. So I have full confidence in the restaurateur to keep that as an important thing. And the second dock concerns me a little bit because of that. So that was a good point. Parking on the side of the road, signs are not beautiful, but I know what have people parking out there, evening business. I have operated projects where they have people dropping bottles and containers and baby diapers and stuff like that, not related to your business, of course. But those things are a concern for those residents. I think that's something that ought to be an augmentation by the operation. I think good restaurateurs police their area, but I think they go beyond that when they know they have customers beyond that. So that was interesting to me. The wake zone, you mentioned. The sidewalk, I think it is what it is. And I think the 20-foot frontage is interesting on that road there. I'm curious how that'll be managed, but that's just an interesting point. And I think that there are a number of things in the operation. I have a lot of, sounds like very good operators. You're on the forefront of doing these things correctly. I think people now expect that from their restaurateurs. Having a place where they throw everything in the river, that's over. And I think it's just incumbent on our staff, which they do a great job. It's just making sure that you've thought of all these things. So thanks for that. I challenge you, new neighbors, which we love to have coming to Manatee County, exciting about have the product. Please join our neighborhood in the way that we like to see it. I think you will, and Caleb can advise you further. Mr. Grimes, sorry, forgive me.
Very good, thank you. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, all right, we're going to move on to staff closing comments. Looks like we're scrambling over there for something. Yes, sir.
Robert Knable again. We're trying to get a map up here for you guys.
Okay.
There it is. So that's the slow speed area all year round. So you can see 75 right there, so right next to 75.
So this isn't an area that and I think generally speaking, this is enforced by the Coast Guard. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I would assume it was the Coast Guard or maybe Manatee County Sheriff Patrols.
I think it's the sheriff.
Well, maybe during rebuttal. So again, so to keep the process on track, staff closing comments. Is that it, or Ms. Rainey? That's it. Nothing else. Applicant rebuttal or closing comments, Mr. Christian, Mr. Grimes.
Hi. Since we're on it, I will let Mr. Christian address this. As you can see, there's already a slow speed zone here. Mm-hmm. And I can attest as a boater that it is enforced by Fish and Game. It is enforced by our sheriff. And if you're in a city, it's enforced by the city folks that have their boats. And so those slow speed zones are enforced. And of course, you got to think about this. If a boat is coming here, they're not going to be flying up to the site. You have to come in and idle and dock. But Mr. Christian, if you could.
Again, Joel Christian for the applicant, and I've been sworn. The map you're looking at is a FWC version of this map. They've adopted the ordinances that the county has for slow speed. Vessel speed regulations in Manatee County were adopted for several purposes, one being for manatee protection because we are a coastal county, and it was required by the state and the, I believe, from U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
It's a settlement of a suit.
Right. So Caleb's correct in that anybody, the county can enforce it because it's a county ordinance. FWC can enforce it because it's adopted in the Florida Administrative Code. So it is enforced. I know personally, the red area in the Braden River is enforced, I believe by the sheriff's office. A coworker of mine had received a ticket in the Braden River for some issues that regarding vessel speed. So I'm very aware that it is enforced. But these vessel speed regulations were adopted there was some initially done a long time ago, mapped to the 5-foot contour of the water. Those were done primarily for shoreline protection, for wave action and wake action. It was also done for manatee protection, and that's why you see everything east of I-75 is slow speed except for the channel itself. So the main channel, and there's a recreation area up there at one of the bends that's kind of hard to see there, right there. That's an actual recreation area where they can do water skiing. So it's an exception area. These maps were created by the county and with the boating community to kind of identify those areas that should be slow speed. The code, when you do something that's not just a single family residential dock, your land development code requires you to try to treat it somewhat like a marina. So we've gone through the plan development waterfront standards. Although it's not plan development waterfront, marina type uses have to address consistency with those plan development waterfront criteria. Those things include pump out facilities, fueling facilities, none of which are going to take place here, but some of the other things are marking a channel from the vessel mooring area to the main channel, that area be slow speed within the mooring areas and to the channel. The channel may be full speed, but the actual channel or the identified area from the mooring areas to the channel is slow speed. And that's what these red areas indicate here are slowed speed as defined by the state.
Thank you. Mr. Grimes, any additional closing comments?
Yes, I would like to address a few, and I appreciate Mr. Mullen coming up and making these comments, and I just want you to know that Mr. McKinnon and Mr. Duffany actually have met with the 5 neighbors, I think, that you had at your meeting. Spent a lot of time with them to make sure that they understood what we were doing. We are not the River Roo. We are not intending to be that kind of restaurant, and I don't mean anything disparaging to them. We are a family restaurant. We're coming in today with modern equipment, modern thing. It's a high-end restaurant. The figure that that I was given by Marty is that we're 70% food versus 30% alcohol sales, and that's a very high percentage because 30% is just people drinking, getting a drink with their meal, a glass of wine or something else. So it is a different setup. Our sound and music is a complete different setup. I actually expected our immediate neighbor to be here today. He said he was going to be here, and it expressed to them that he's very much in favor of this and looking forward to it because he has been educated and understands what we are doing there and what buffers. As far as the parking, we are intending on handling our parking problems on site through your rules and through your regulations, through valet, through various things. And I can tell you that to have no parking signs, as Ms. Tusing indicated, the county commission would have to approve, I think it's by resolution, it could be by ordinance, but I think it's resolution. No parking being placed on there and the no parking signs. If the neighbors want that, we will certainly support it. We want our neighbors walking down there and joining us for dinner. We do not want to have any issues such as that. And so we will, and I put it right here on the record, we will support that if that is brought to the county. We can't do that, and we can't do that in this hearing. It is something that would have to be acted on. And I believe that a lot of the concerns will be gone when the road is cut off. But I also understand Mr. Mullins saying that, hey, I may have a year before it's cut off where people are still all that extra traffic is still going on down to someone else. And so I think that it is something that the county should look at for a short period of time, and maybe even be able to look at how soon they can cut that road off. We can't do that. It's not going to change what we do, but we feel very strongly that once that road's cut off, that the number of trips that we will put on there, they're going to be less than Level Rocks had. That was a huge restaurant. We're going to have fewer trips than that, and with all of the trips that are coming off the road because it's cut off, it's going to be a lot less traffic than is there today. Again, and once you cut it off, speeding would be very difficult because you could hardly get up to speed before you have to slam on the brakes. However, if the neighbors would want some kind of speed reduction plateaus or something, again, we would support them in that. We have no objection to that. We would absolutely support them in that. And so we're trying to, I really wish everybody could go up to Port Richey and see the facility there. I actually went up there last night and ate. And I had this feel of a very nice high-end restaurant, very much like the Sandbar or the Beach House. And the people that were there were families, senior citizens, different groups that were all out enjoying the dining experience on the water, and you could see some boats go by, you would see the birds, and so forth. And I do want to address briefly the lighting. You guys have some really good, strong lighting ordinances. We have to meet them, and I believe that you do have people that go out and check it when we put it together, but it will be shown you have to shield them. And one reason I showed you that picture of the place up there at night, you saw how subtle the lighting was. It wasn't big lights shining down on anything. And that's to have that nice feel at night where you can see the night sky, where you can enjoy all of that. So that is the plan that we do have there. So with all that in mind, again, if I've missed something that I should have addressed, I'll be glad to answer a question. But we're going to be up against the interstate. We're going to be up against the roadway. We are already, half of it is zone plan development, mixed use. It is not going to be a residence. It can't be. And it's been planned for this type of use, and we think this is probably one of the best ones we could put there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, anything further for the applicant? Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and close the public testimony portion of the hearing and go to discussion and deliberation. Mr. Grimes' closing comment regarding the location and proximity of the interstate, I think, makes this decision, which if it were elsewhere, it might be a little more difficult, but I think the fact that it's close to something so attractive as an interstate makes it a little makes it seem more of an appropriate use, and I think that's one of the overriding themes here. Mr. Rutledge.
I think the other thing is, you know what, we want good neighbors, we want good businesses, and I think that, we've got a lot of policies and we have a lot of protections, and I think this meeting gives you the forum to comment as do the thing. And so what we really want is good people who intend to do good things. I've heard of the group. I think some of these things are challenged to accomplish, but if you have a good neighbor, they try and solve them, because that makes good restaurants, and good restaurants make money, and that's what everybody's about. So I think there's a lot of challenge to the restaurant business. I don't want to be in it, but good for you guys. And I think that the conditions in this particular location with the restaurants on the other side all makes a lot of sense. And if we can bring in a good neighbor that's not like everybody else, because you're not. I mean, it's just your configuration and model is not replicated by very many places around. So having said all that, I've raised a lot of questions related to this, but I think that this having a good neighbor doing a good job and being successful would be a plus, and I'm going to vote for it.
Any additional comments, discussion, deliberation? Mr. Roth.
Did we address signage at all? I'm talking about signs high enough to be seen by 75.
We did not, but that's part of the code, so it's typically by right, I think would be the appropriate way to describe that. So Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to point out that any motion to approve the recommended motion would include the replacement stipulation C7 regarding the final wetland buffer management plan. Mr. Grimes entered into the record.
So it's adding C7 or replacing C7?
Well, C7 is one sentence now. It says a final wetland buffer management plan shall be submitted for review and approval with the final site plan. And the substitute C7 is in the wetland buffer management plan, which was handed out by Mr. Grimes. It's slightly modified. Do you want me to read it in the record?
Hold on.
We have a different
I make a
recommended
motion.
No, the reason, let me explain what happened. I noticed it. It was not, the motion wasn't revised as part of your.
Okay.
C7 has already been there, so it will be a revised C7 stipulation.
Right, but the motion currently says
Six.
C1 through C6.
Right, so it needs to say 7. It should have said 7.
Okay.
That didn't get caught when that additional stipulation was put in.
Okay, and Ms. Shank, could you please
Well,
read?
I'll just read the first three sentences to make sure.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
the revised C7, a final wetland buffer management plan shall be submitted for review and approval with the final site plan. The wetland buffer management plan shall include sufficient detail for staff to determine compliance with this approval and the concept plan, and shall address the following. There's a series of 7 bullets of what it will address. And the last paragraph, the final wetland buffer management plan shall be consistent with the conceptual wetland buffer management plan approved with this general development plan, and talks about reconfiguration possible. And then that's the conclusion of it. It's in the record.
Very good, thank you. So the chair will entertain a motion on this application.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeLesling.
based upon staff report evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and findings of request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein, I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDMU 1729ZG, approval of general development plan with stipulations A1 through A3, B1 through B3, C1 through C7, D1 through D4, granting special approval for a project adjacent to a perennial lake or stream as recommended by staff.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ron, second. Any additional discussion or deliberation? Okay, the chair is going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. And I believe that's the last item we have on the agenda today, so I'm going to call the meeting adjourned.
Very good.